Jim.
Who are you with, Jim?
Jim Freedom, yeah, Street News Network.
Hey, Dan. Nice to
Oh,
meet you.
Jim.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Dan. Yeah.
Oh, you're Dan.
Yeah,
Okay,
nice to
all
meet
right.
you, Jim.
You said, hey, Dan. I thought.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay.
Where do
yeah.
you guys put out to? Or?
Just the internet. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Different places on the internet. Probably five or six different outlets. You know?
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm sure you're getting just basic conversation here. You might not have expected any investigative reporters or anything.
Yeah.
But I'm asking honest questions. Like, my whole point is, the one officer said, we're here to just meet the people in the world and get to know them. Well, to my point, many of the people in the world, we don't really care that much about getting to know you personally. We have questions that want answered. You know what I mean? One of the officers didn't like the way I phrased the first question, but I wanted to ask, would you agree that every time you initiate lights on someone, when you pull somebody over, that is a threat of violence on that person if they don't comply? Like if they
I see what he means by your question. It's kind of a strange.
Yeah, it is
question.
worded a little bit.
Okay,
but it's honest in my opinion.
Okay, so let's go with your language, threat of violence. Explain to me what that would mean to you. If you were being pulled over and the lights come on, you would feel a threat of violence for me, is what you're saying. What would that mean?
Meaning, I know what the red and blue lights mean. That means that you're demanding that I pull over immediately. And if I don't follow that order, I'm going to have violence used against me. You'll pit maneuver my car, you'll crash into my car, you'll follow me at high speed, you'll shoot me if you feel that threatened, if you think I have a weapon or whatnot. You'll escalate. And escalation includes violence. You're basically saying when you pull somebody over, pull over and deal with what I have to say, or I'm going to escalate and use violence against you if you don't. That's essentially what.
Right?
That's my opinion.
So, that's fair, but that's not necessarily accurate. So, first thing we'd have to look at is why am I pulling you over, right?
Right.
Did you just go through the red light, so I'm going to initiate a stop? Let's just say that's the case, and you decide not to pull over.
Right.
I'm going to let it go because we don't have a pursuit. That wouldn't be, as a supervisor, that wouldn't be enough reason for me to justify a pursuit to go after you.
Really?
Yeah.
See,
so there would be no escalation of violence, right?
Right.
But
well, in that case, there wouldn't be. That blows my mind.
Sure. But we would try and find you and catch up with you later. You know.
Right.
What I mean?
Okay. So you would try to get my plates and put it in the system.
Yeah, and then I'd try and find you at a later date.
Right. Okay. So because I believe that pulling someone over is a threat of violence, my next question is phrased: do you believe it's ethical to threaten someone with violence, i.e. pull them over, simply because they have window tint on? If their window tint looks too dark. Cops do pull people over for that sometimes. Do you think that's an ethical thing to do? You're essentially threatening them with violence only because their windows are too dark?
Remember, Jim, it's not always a threat of violence like the example I gave you.
Right.
If you don't pull over, I'm not going to threaten you with violence, right? But you got to remember, when we pull people over, we're doing it because there's a law in place, right? So the law says legally you're allowed front window tint, but it can only be so dark, and it's for safety.
It's for safety?
Yeah,
the safety involved?
So at night, if the windows are too dark, you can't see out very well. So inevitably, you could turn into somebody because it's so dark. You might not see someone in your blind spot or moving, doing lane changes or stopping at a stop sign, turning. There's a pedestrian. If your windows are so dark, you might not see them. So that's why we have laws in place for things like that.
Okay.
But then if you didn't stop, then it would be the same thing. I'd let it go. And technically, the law requires you to pull over. If you don't, it's a felony.
Right.
But I'm not going to pursue you for that.
Yeah, most officers, in my opinion, would. So it's good to hear.
It depends on the agency. So everybody has different policies, right, on when to do that. But we wouldn't hit you in a maneuver like that or something.
Right.
Yeah. I want you to always look at it.
So to the point of the window tint, you say it's for safety. Then why is it? What logical reason is there for officers to have an exemption to that? Why can officers have dark tint, but people can't? Why are officers allowed to live dangerously and people aren't?
I don't know the answer to it.
That's a hard one, right?
Yeah.
See, those are the questions I'm here to get to, because it's like, when you draw things to their logical conclusion, a lot of things are like, well, maybe that doesn't make as much sense as we thought it did, you know?
True. And in fairness, I actually want my front windows on my own car darker, but I follow
It's
the law.
cooler in the summertime.
Yes, it is. And because I've been in the cars at night, some of them are dark in the front, but some of them are at the legal limit just because we've had a problem with the officers not being able to see well too.
Yeah.
And for the record, I've never pulled anyone over and given them a cite for it either. So.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear
Yeah.
personally. I'm glad to hear that when I hear that from an officer
I
personally.
try to be
but-
real fair with people, to be honest.
Yeah.
Not everyone is.
That's good, yeah.
I try to be
In my
fair.
opinion, the majority aren't. It's just my opinion, I'm being honest with you. The vast majority of officers do not hold that same thought process. You know, they're like one of my other questions, your oath. How important is your oath to you? Is it like, do you take it very seriously, or is it just something that you did to get the job?
It is, because I've always wanted to be an officer, and I always lived a moral life, you know what I mean? I was in Boy Scouts, and you have an oath in scouting, and we have the oath here, we have it on the wall at the station, so yeah, it's important to me, because the last thing I want to do is be a hypocrite.
Right,
you know what I
right.
mean?
So,
Say
okay.
uphold the law, but then be abusive, I don't want to do that to people.
Right. So your oath to the Constitution and the Constitution itself, the document you took an oath to.
It's actually to our state law, the oath.
Oh, okay. So you don't take an oath to the Constitution?
I'd have to double check and see, but I think it's to our state law. Uphold the law of Arizona, you know that. type of thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was misunderstood on that then. I believe that all officers of the law took an oath to
Well, we're
uphold,
supposed to-
defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. Is that not part of it?
We don't have that verbiage in it.
You don't have that verbiage.
I'd
That's
have to
just
double
military
check and see.
or
I don't know what that is.
Okay. Well, I was just going to say, because I believe the Constitution says that no law shall be passed that's unconstitutional. So, like, in my opinion, can you see where I'm going with the idea that a tint law, window tint law, is unconstitutional? You know what I mean? Can you see why I would believe that? Or a
Right, but
seatbelt
so-
law. A seatbelt law is unconstitutional. What's the seatbelt law got to do? Why is it a law that I have to be safe, you know? But a motorcycle guy don't. A guy can ride on a motorcycle all he wants and live dangerously. If
Actually,
he crashes, he goes flying. But if I'm in a car, it's against the law for me not to, you know, that don't make any sense, right?
Remember, I see all the bad accidents and collisions that happen, and in people's lives that could have been saved if they didn't have the seatbelt on, so that's why they imposed the law.
But again, still, it's the same question. I mean, you see all those bad accidents, why don't you push to outlaw motorcycles?
Yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
I see
People
what-
die
I see- okay, I see
horribly.
what you're
Why don't
saying.
you push for that?
But there's
because
al-
freedom. That's why you don't push for that. So why don't you apply freedom to the seatbelt?
Yeah, I would have to disagree with you, Jim. I think we got different points of view on that.
Yeah.
I see your argument, but I would just see it because there's always going to be a line in the sand on certain things. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Are you reading my questions?
No, I wasn't.
You should have. They're good.
Are they? I'm sure they are.
Real quick. There's 5 rights mentioned in the First Amendment. Can you name
Tell
them?
me.
You don't know them?
Tell me.
Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of press, freedom of assembly, freedom of grievance. That's the 5.
Sounds about right. Thank you for being here.
Hey,
What's your name
no
again?
problem. Jim.
Jim.
Jim Freedom, Street News Network.
Jim Freedom.